Welcome to the Rebel Rebel. I'm your host, Michael Dargie. In this episode, meet Stuart Warren Dansby, a fighter and filmmaker proving that age is just a number. At 55, he steps into the ring, defying odds and inspiring resilience through his documentary, Taking the Fight. This episode is brought to you by my book, Brand Jitsu. Move your brand from meh to memorable. Brand Jitsu is the battle-tested method I've been using for nearly 20 years to help artists, entrepreneurs, and businesses find, shape, and share their stories so everyone gets it. And where do you get a copy of this amazing book? Glad you asked. Head over to brandjitsu.com to order a signed copy, or get it at Indigo, Chapters, Kohl's, Barnes & Noble, or head down to your local independent bookstore and ask them to bring it in. Welcome to the Rebel Rebel. I'm your host, Michael Dargie, and all the way across the world, way down south in a beautiful little hamlet called Miami, I've got Stuart Warren Dansby. How the hell are you?
I am sitting here in this beautiful, hot AF hamlet, and I am perfect. Thank you for asking, Michael. Never been better in my whole life.
Awesome. That's so good. Well, I'm so glad to have this conversation with you, Stuart, because, you know, oh man, when we first got connected, and you're just like, I found out that you did this documentary called Taking the Fight, which is, and I think you're a little older than I am, not by a whole lot, but a little bit. But you got into fighting, like professional fighting, like at a fairly ripe age. And I've got so many questions. So first off, thank you for putting together this documentary. I got to see a screener of it. Nicely done.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
It's doing the circuit on the festivals, which is awesome. But I thought maybe you could just tell us a little bit about why.
Yeah. Why I fight or why the documentary?
Yeah, well, I think the documentary is self-explanatory, but we'll get into why the documentary. But I mean, why when you're older start training for professional fighting? Like, what the hell, dude?
So I've gotten asked that frequently in the beginning, certainly by my wife, a lot, but she is always in my corner. The only thing I'll clarify is I am an amateur fighter, not a professional
fighter.
But you know, when you're getting punched in the face and kicked in the ribs, you don't really know if it's an amateur kick or a professional one, or it still hits your liver the same way.
I was going to say, there's nothing quite like a liver kick to sort you out.
You know it. I had this conversation with a friend of mine over the weekend. It just robs you of your soul. Hector Lombard, who fought in Bellator in the UFC, we were talking about it. He's like, it just takes everything you have. Yeah. But I got into it. I'd always wanted to learn how to box. Reached out to a friend who was a kickboxer. I couldn't find a boxer, so he took me through a first lesson. And I remember at the end of that first lesson, he said, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I want you to hit me. And this guy was a high-level pro. And I'm like, I'm not going to hit you. I know better. Yeah. And he's like, no. I'm not going to hit you back. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to hit me. I couldn't. He stood right in the pocket. I couldn't land anything on him, not one punch. And I sat there at the end of 30 seconds going, all you'd have to do is hit me right now because I can't even defend myself, right? And it was the most, I'd considered myself an athlete.
Yeah.
I never considered my age. I didn't even bring that in as a factor. My whole life I thought I was an athlete, and I always trained and lifted and was in shape. And I went, I'm not an athlete. This was the most humbling, humiliating experience I've ever had in a sports arena. And I became obsessed with it. I have to be good at this thing. And if you go back a couple of decades from that, I was that kid. I was the little kid. My mom would always say, hey, if somebody picks on you because you're little, fight back. Right. That was a little like giving, probably an inappropriate expression, the keys to the pharmacy to the crack addict. Like it was like, I loved to fight to begin with. And mom just gave me permission as long as they started it. Right. So when I go back, they always started it, Michael. I never started it.
No,
never.
Not Stuart Warren Dansby.
Is that blood on your shirt? It's not my blood, Mom. The other kid hit me first. So I always loved that. And then as an adult, you kind of get thrown in jail if you start doing that. So I ceased it at some point. But I just became fascinated with the sport. And it was so difficult and so challenging for me athletically that I just kind of became captivated with it. And I started going through getting belts, right? Green belt, purple belt in American kickboxing. And the guy that owns one of the gyms I train at, Diego De Vera, who's in the documentary, comes up one day and he goes, it's time to train for your black belt. or to test for your black belt. And I really wasn't feeling it. And I looked at my coach, Greg Choplin. Greg is a three-time WBC World Muay Thai champion. Yeah. And I said, I don't really think I'm a black belt. And your coaches always know you. That's what you hate about them. Number one, you never win an argument with them. Yeah. And number two, they know how to get in your head. And he looked at me and he said, well, I have a different take on it. And I said, what's that? And he goes, I don't think you can be a black belt unless you've taken a fight. And Michael, he turns and he walks away. And I'm looking at the back of his head, and I'm literally in my head going, you motherfucker. You fuck you, Greg. I am so like looking at him like, you just called me out. Yeah. And I knew at that moment what I had to do. And so he took off to France a couple of weeks. He goes back and forth from France, where he's from, comes back. I told him I wanted to take a fight. And he said, let's see when we come back. He comes back and I'm like 20 pounds down already. I started dieting. Boom. And he says, okay, you're serious about this. And I said, I told you I am. Yeah. And this is the only argument I've ever won with my coach. He says, okay, I'll get you a fight. At the time I'm 55. He says, I'll get you a fight with somebody in their 50s. And I'm like, nope. He's like, oh, come on, man. And I'm like, no. So, okay, I'll get you somebody in their 40s. And I'm like, nope. And he goes down, like he's going down 10 years, like we're negotiating. He goes at 30s. And I go, Greg, let me be clear. You'll get me a first-time fighter just like I am. If the guy's 22 years old,
that's great.
I am not going to lose because he's 22. I am going to win or lose because I am the better or not better fighter. But you will not put an asterisk next to this. You will not grade it on a curve. I'm going to fight somebody that's in their prime. And it's the only argument I ever won with him. He looks at me and he goes, okay, but he gives me that look like, okay.
I think also that's a bit of an equalizer, though, because I know some stuff about things that happen in the ring. And the first time you're in a ring is way different than the 10th time or 20th time that you're there.
Big time, yeah.
So I think that there's an equalizer there. If it's a young guy who's got gas for days, that's great. But he might blow the entire wad on the adrenaline that hits when it's happening.
Yeah. In my first fight in a ring, that happened. Yeah. So my first fight was in a tournament, but my first fight in a ring, that actually happened. Young dude, 26, 6'2". I had to take a standing 8 that first fight. You saw it in the documentary, right? You saw that fight. Yeah. And by the third, I won the third because he told me afterwards, he's like, dude, this is his words. It's like, I don't know what you're made out of because I hit you with everything and it landed. You weren't ducking them and you were barely blocking them.
Old guy strength.
And you still didn't go down. He's like, I don't know what you're made out of. We're good friends to this day.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was probably a great equalizer because the nerves were there. I think one of the two guys I fought in the tournament had one previous fight, and the other one had 0 or 1. So yeah, that to me was the equalizer, and I don't want an asterisk by it. And that's what motivates me. What motivates me is fighting guys 30 years younger than me. And there's lifelong martial artists. If I went to Thailand, found guys my age that have been fighting Muay Thai their whole life, they're going to beat my ass. Okay. But if I beat a guy that, let's say, was doing on the same journey, that had been training for 4 or 5 years and he's in his 50s, I'm not going to get excited. I'm not going to get up for it. I'm going to get excited. I'm going to get up for it because all the guys I train and spar with are professional or amateur mixed martial artists or Muay Thai fighters, most of them in their 20s, a few in their 30s. And those are the guys I go against every week. And nobody's looking at me going, well, it's Stuart. Let's take it easy on him because he's older.
Yeah.
They're not. We're going to spar at that technical level. Exactly. I don't know why. But that's the bad attitude they get.
I love you, Stuart, but I do want to punch you in the face. No.
That's that, and you know combat sports because you know that. That is it, man. When you're done, there's the hug, love you, bro, and it's real. Yeah, and you understand that well.
It is the weirdest thing, isn't it? That once you go through that combat, that it's the best thing ever for connection.
The bond you build and you know this well. From your jiu-jitsu it is just so tight because you're literally battling each other's will, and at the same time you're pushing each other
and yourself too.
You're pushing yourself.
How much can you pull out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you take yourself emotionally and spiritually places that you've never been before? And as you know, it's really not about beating. If I'm going against a high level pro MMA fighter, and I do this every Saturday, and I'm like, okay, you're at a couple levels above me. It's not about me beating you. It's about me beating the last Stuart Dansby that sparred with you.
Right.
It's about making you a little bit more uncomfortable, making you work harder. And did I beat that guy that walked into here last Saturday for sparring? Did I beat that same guy? Right?
Why? So I think everybody has their own reason why they do things. And certainly there's been so many guests on this show that have got different reasons for pursuing business, for doing arts, for doing all this stuff. What is it about you that has just, where's that itch come from? Where does that, because you've taken it to a just different level. So let's be honest.
I have a huge competitive streak in me. And I think one of the things, and again, I think fighting is something I loved as a kid. So once I saw the beauty in it, the technique in it, the strategy in it, which most people don't understand, it just started to develop in me. And I just said, this is something I have to be good at. And those moments where you are getting your ass kicked, where you are literally getting your ass kicked, and you look up and there's still 2 minutes left on the clock. Those are moments that define who you are as a human being. Yeah. And I've learned to look and search for those moments because those are our moments of growth. And there's sometimes when you're done with that moment and you say, okay, I survived, but I know I didn't push myself. I know I didn't redefine who I am. And there's moments when you're like, man, I just sparred with Yoel Romero. And he just threw a hard head kick, and I came back and countered with him, right? I just sparred with Greg Choplin for 6 rounds, and he overwhelmed me, but I improved, and he pulled me aside afterwards. And so that desire to compete and that desire to improve who I am as a human being, and I'll bring it back to a conversation briefly that I had with someone that I work with last summer. And she said, when are you going to retire? And I looked at her and I said, let me ask you a question. At what age should I stop achieving? At what age should I stop improving? And at what age should I stop trying to give back to the rest of the world that's given me, to stop contributing to others? Right. And I'm like, retirement, I can't contemplate that. I really can't, because to me, that's death. That's when you get old, right? And I love that heat of combat in that moment where you are, and you know this, like every bit of your senses, your mental, your physical, your spiritual, it's all aligned. The rest of the world goes away. And in those moments, it's just pure joy. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I have this, It's an interesting journey that you're on, and because there is, and we all have this. We all have an expiry date, whatever that happens to be. We all get to shuffle off this mortal coil and go and do something different in the universe later on, whatever that looks like. During this time here, you're on this, a bit of an epic journey. Learning this stuff and participating in it and getting better from it. But there will come a time when your body can't take the beating that you're getting. But that then becomes the time for you to, hold the mantle for others or carry others forward. And that's the one thing I guess I heard from that conversation is, it's about improving all the time, whatever that improvement looks like. It's about sharing that knowledge and that joy, whatever that looks like. There's no such thing as retirement. There's plenty of time to retire when I'm dead.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I've recognized through this journey, there was a moment when Greg Choplin, I have 2 coaches, Greg Choplin and Manolo Lopez, and Greg pulled me aside. It was during a training camp for my first fight in the ring. And I was exhausted and I sucked. It was a Friday afternoon. I remember this well, probably my 7th workout of the week. I had 2 more to go Saturday. And he takes me through where we hit pads for an hour. Then he's got a technique class. So 6 or 8 fighters file in. We do technique for another hour, and then we spar. And I'm getting my ass kicked by a 135-pound fighter. I fight at 170. I've got 4 inches of the guy, and he's just clinching me and kneeing me and hitting me with uppercuts. Greg's yelling at me. Greg never yells. He never raises his voice. He finally does. He's yelling at me. Then when sparring class ends, they do an ab class, and they do 2 or 3 rounds of abs. And I walk away. I go sit down, and then I'm trying to recover, and I'm trying to walk out of the gym. And Greg comes up. He pulls me aside, and he goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm leaving." He goes, "What is wrong with you?" And he gets in my ass hard. And he's never like this. He says, "Your hands were down. You didn't defend yourself." And I start making excuses. And I'm like, no, man. I'm exhausted, Greg. I was fine. And all of a sudden he whips out his phone. He goes, "Look, tell me your hands were up." He videoed it, didn't tell me.
Whoa.
And he goes, "No, watch it." And I'm watching it, and my hands are down my waist. And this guy, Alex, is just manhandling me. And I'm like, "Greg, I'm just exhausted." And then he says, "Why didn't you take ab class?" And again, doubt and excuses had entered the building, right?
Yeah.
And I said, "Greg, I did 600 abs yesterday. My abs are sore. I'm on 2-a-days. It wouldn't benefit me to do ab class." And he's like, "I don't care what benefits you."
Yeah.
And this gave me the responsibility right here. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You might not be the best fighter in here, but I've got a team of 8 to 10 fighters out there that look at you as a role model. And if you don't take ab class, then they realize they can slack. If you don't bring it every day, if you don't spar with Alex harder next time, then everybody comes down because they look at you as the role model of effort. They look at you as the role model of positivity and of a desire to learn. I need you to take ab class for me. And one more thing," and I remember this, and he's like, "If you're not sore and you're not tired, then don't call yourself a fighter, and you'll never be a champion." And I got really quiet, and then he pulled me back, and he says, "Listen." He put his hands on my shoulders, and he said, "Listen, you got to want that. You got to look for that. You got to embrace it. When that moment comes and you're exhausted and you're getting your ass kicked and you want to look for that moment and wrap your soul around it. Because those are your moments and your opportunities to grow and to define who you are and to show all these 20-something-year-old fighters what drive and work ethic and determination is." And he empowered me with that. And I understood my role. I train out of 2 different combat gyms. And at that moment, I kind of understood, okay, this is my role. This is why other fighters keep coming up and saying, "You're inspiring me. You're our inspiration." And I really was uncomfortable with that. Yeah. But at that moment, I said, as long as I walk the walk, I can be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Totally. And when you're saying that stuff, I know where you're at because there is always another gear. You just have to be aware that there's another gear there to take.
Yeah.
And no matter how spent you are, no matter how broken you are, there's always one more gear to go.
Yeah. And it's accessing it and finding it. You can always throw that one more sloppy punch. You can always try one more sloppy submission, right? Like, or you can go, "Nah, man, I love this moment. This is my moment. I own this moment," right? Yeah. And you do it with joy and with passion. And then you stay technical and you don't gas as much.
Yeah. I mean, I've witnessed fighters and both myself like training where we've run out of gas, and you are literally throwing dead arms on somebody.
Yeah,
right. Like, but I mean, that's such a great moment because the moment you can take that dead arm, like that's another gear, right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. It's a fascinating journey that you're on, Stuart.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're in Miami. I've been to Miami. I like Miami. Miami's nice. You got beaches. You got yachts. You've got the amazing cuisine.
Yeah.
And I don't know where maybe you go for runs to keep your cardio up, where would you do that? What's your favorite place?
So I have grade 4 arthritis in my left knee and a surgically repaired ACL. It's bone on bone. My right knee does not have an ACL. It has grade 4 arthritis. It's literally bone on bone. The last surgeon that was in there said this when I came out in the recovery room, and I quote, and he said, medically speaking, I cannot explain how you can walk on that knee. So part of the journey of this documentary, as you know, is it isn't just the age gap. It is the life-changing injuries that I have. Yeah. So I'm not supposed to run, but then again, I'm not supposed to be able to walk on it. And then again, I'm not supposed to be able to kick with it. So this morning, what I do instead of that is I ran stadium stairs on a stadium in South Beach, because stadium stairs, I can cushion the blow. As I run, I can widen my feet, and then I run 50 stadium stairs this morning, and then I did 15 squat jumps up those same stadium stairs, boom, boom, boom. And then depending on how my knees feel, I'll either go barefoot on AstroTurf and run, I call them sprints, 50-yard sprints. Last time I was doing it, there was a 90-year-old pregnant grandmother in a wheelchair going backwards, and she passed me. So I'm not sure if they're sprints.
Did you say 90-year-old pregnant woman in a wheelchair?
90-year-old pregnant grandmother in a wheelchair going backwards, and she passed me, Michael. That was very humbling.
I'm picturing you laying down.
I think that's how fast I sprint. I call them sprints. Okay. And then but this morning instead, I did 3 rounds of shadow boxing. So I'm that guy in the middle of the football field doing shadow boxing, and everybody's going, who is this guy? What's wrong with him?
While you're doing that, and you're doing your thing, and you're in your place, and you're in your moment, and the rest of the world peels away, and you're just in that spot. What is the one thing that you wish the world knew?
Exactly what I said I'm not supposed to be able to do. I'm not supposed to be able to walk on this knee. I'm not supposed to be able to fight guys. Learn a new sport over 50 and then compete with guys half my age and win. I wish the world realized that we all do have a fight, right? Every one of us. And in my journey, fighting is the metaphor. We all hold ourselves back. We all have crap in our head that keeps us from what our dreams are. Some of us won't even visualize them. We won't even talk about them. And I wish people realize that, first off, acknowledge what it is. What is that? What that dream that you want to do? What do you want to be at any age? What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to be an artist? Do you want to be a musician? What is it? But realize it first. And then secondly, unless it's me saying I want to be 6'8" and playing power forward in the NBA, almost every one of those dreams or those visions are attainable, right? In my case, it took 15 years of training for me to be able to fight for a championship. In my case, it took 9 years to take the concept of a documentary and bring it to fruition where it's now available streaming on 4 national platforms. So what happens with most of us is, we don't want to identify. We really won't admit what that dream is. It's like, well, maybe I'll talk to somebody about it. First off, own it. And then secondly, recognize that you can achieve it. But the way you achieve it, especially in this country, the people and the resources that you need to achieve your dreams, they're all around you. They're all around you, but you're not going to access them until you give your dream I call it I want it more than I want to breathe energy every single day. And then those people and resources will start coming forward. Example, I told you one of my coaches is Greg Choplin, 3-time World Muay Thai champion, WBC. My other coach is Manolo Lopez, just elected to the MMA Hall of Fame. They're opposing coaches, Michael. They don't see each other unless they're standing across a ring or a cage. They come together. Those 2 high-level, best of the best coaches come together to coach this over-the-hill amateur hack fighter. At one moment, they're in the corner together to coach me. How do I attract those human beings? How do I attract guys like Yoel Romero calling me out before his title fight, wanting to spar with me? how do we get those resources? And we do it by giving our dream that relentless energy. And then when those people and those resources come forward, give it more. Give them more than they thought they were going to get, because they will rise with you and they will give you more. And that's what I wish. And that's the whole theme of the documentary is understand that you can do it. You can't expect it's going to happen in a minute or in a week or in a month. I never thought it would take me 9 years to do a documentary. My wife asked me that when we first started. She goes, how long do you think? And I'm like, man, 6 months. We'll have this thing out. Well, first off, we had to follow me for 6 years to go through fights and tribulations and challenges and medical issues, and then finally get the opportunity for a championship. So I didn't write the story. It's a documentary. Yeah. Time, and I honestly believe this. And I think, God had a hand in, hey, dude, your story isn't told yet. Shut up, sit down, keep fighting. We're not ready to finish this thing.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Okay, love it. Thank you. That's kick-ass. What's something that you do just for Stuart? Like in the quiet moments of, maybe it's a big bucket of Rocky Road ice cream. What's your guilty pleasure, Stuart? What's the thing that, just gives you pause?
I am blessed to finally reside in a home here in the water in Biscayne Bay in Miami. So I have a 75-pound Australian cattle dog husky mix. We call him Jet the water dog. And Jet owns a boat that's in the backyard, and he allows me to captain him out on that boat. So we will Saturday mornings, especially Friday nights, we'll jump in the boat and I take him out to all these islands, and he goes crazy and thinks he's in the wilderness. And a lot of times I'll do it after my day ends about 7:30 at night. And that is, I call it my happy hour, but I don't need a drink. And we go out in the boat, we anchor on an island, we beach it, throw coconuts in the water for him, and I chill and I just look at the sunset and I look at the ocean, and I live in gratitude. I have an expression which is rise, grind, function, achieve in gratitude. Wow. And that's what I say to myself every day before I do affirmations. And at night when I'm out there, I say that same thing.
Damn. Oh man. That sounds lovely. That sounds like just the perfect way to reset.
Yeah, it is.
Especially with a big derpy dog. Who lets you captain his boat.
He lets me captain his boat. He rides up on the bow like a hood ornament on a Jaguar, right? He's like, and he goes down we go down the canal, and he's barking at every other dog saying, hey, you guys got a boat? Because I got one.
Yeah.
Right? Talking trash. That's in my mind what I think he says.
Yeah. Outstanding. What's one of the things you love about Miami?
You know what I love about Miami is the diversity. I occasionally tease myself as the last gringo left in Miami. And where I train in Freedom Fighters MMA, I am the only gringo that's been there for 10 years. Every once in a while, it's funny because someone show up and one of my buddies, Marcus Lloreda, they'll go, hey, there's another gringo here today. Look, we got two of you. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, Mark. I don't know him. We don't all know each other, right? But I love the diversity of culture. My wife is Colombian American. I've always had an intrigue with the Latin culture, from the language to the music. I love the music. And there's a different passion with the Latin community that I think kind of are normal, whatever you want to call it, American kind of white culture doesn't have. Yeah. There's a passion, there's an enthusiasm. Something you said, the food, the restaurants here, Miami is not about the corporate chain restaurants. I mean, they're here, but you can go and find Nicaraguan food, Colombian food, Cuban food, and it's all different. And then you can find Brazilian food, and then Haitian food, and it's all very, very different. So I would say the energy, the diversity, and the food. Plus, I'm the biggest cold candy ass on the planet, and I will tell you that. I grew up in Colorado, right? And I go back to Colorado almost every summer, in the mountains, right? Yeah. So I love the outdoor lifestyle. I love water. I was just down in Colombia on vacation last week and got some surfing in. So anytime around that water lifestyle, I'm ecstatic.
Amazing. I've got friends they're traveling. They're actually going to move down to South America somewhere, and currently they're in Medellin. And it was funny. Like when I was talking with him today, him and his wife, they're just like, because she's from down south, and he said one of the most amazing things about traveling to this place, because he's from all over the world, but last stop was Canada. Now they're going down here. He goes, there are people out there on the front steps of their house. They're communicating. It is a community.
Yes.
It is people talking to people in
Yes.
the world that's living together, as
Yes.
opposed to what we find in the suburbs. You're probably maybe similar to what we see up here in Canada. Everybody, you don't really know your neighbor. You don't hang out with them. You don't talk
Correct.
with them. You're there, but you're apart.
You wave at them, but you don't know them. And you're very right. When you go to, and this is my 4th trip to Colombia, and when you go there, I always come back going, you know what? They've got life figured out, because it's a Tuesday evening. Yeah. And you go downtown and people are just out. They're hanging out together. They're talking together. And I don't mean out like getting banged up.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's just enjoying life. And the family unit, to your point, is much stronger, deeper, and wider than our nuclear family, right? And that's, I think, something we've lost along the way, because we're very transient. I'm an example of that, both a nuclear family and a guy who's moved several times from where I want to be, right? Yeah. But you find that sense of community is so much deeper and richer. And what's fascinating, having just gotten back from there, is we were out in the country. So a lot of what we might consider poverty levels is middle class. You'll see a family of 4 on a motorcycle, because that is their only piece of transportation. But you know what? They're enjoying life. They're appreciating life. They're going through the same challenges we are, but they have a much more grounded sense of what's important. Yeah. And it's not materialistic things, and it's not how many likes I got on IG. You know what I mean? It's really about the quality of life. You're so right.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'll throw another thing out here, and this is not to be political whatsoever, but a friend of mine, he bought some property down in Mexico, and they spend half the year in Mexico, half the year in Canada. And there's a huge Latin community in Canada, as there is,
everywhere.
But it was funny. We went to the Mexican consulate for a photo exhibition that a friend of mine put on. And I couldn't tell you what this is in Spanish, but my friend walked in, and all these people from Mexico are there, and he said something about, we are all Americans. And the rest of, everybody lit up, because we've been so divided. Canada, the United States, Mexico, Central America, South America. We've been told that we're all different, but we're all Americans. And I think that's just I got chills even just thinking about that thought of it, that, we need to stop the division of stuff and start recentering ourselves to the fact that we're all a community, and we should.
Yeah. And I wish more people had that point of view, because when you take that strong stance of, this is what's right, my way of thinking, then you're alienating. You're not helping. No. You're not gonna, that person that's on the opposite side of that fence, you're not bringing them over. They're not going, oh, really? I didn't know that. And the only way you bring each other over is to find that common ground, like you said. And I agree with you.
Thank you. And I've said this a couple times, but I would like you to, if you could, now you said you fought as a kid, but as an adult, I don't believe many adults have been punched in the face. and I bring this up because I think it's a very clarifying moment, that you don't know what you don't know until you're punched in the face. And, do you have any recommendations? I don't want, 55-year-olds, 65, 75-year-olds going to an MMA gym just get punched in the face. But can you unpack this for me a little bit?
Meaning what it feels like, or what should somebody do if they want to get into training?
No, I think what it feels like, because it's something that's so unfamiliar to us.
Yeah.
And we see it on television, we see it on, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a clarifying moment. It's not about training. It's about dealing with what happens next.
It is, right? Like the old expression that a black belt's a black belt until he gets punched in the face and then he's a white belt, right? That expression, which really has nothing to do with belts. It's just, is it in you or is it not? And if it's not, do you want it to be in you, right? So I think that moment that you first get punched in the face, or you first get a hard leg kick landed on you that hits your sciatic nerve like an electric shock going up your spine, or the first time you get kicked or punched in the liver, those are moments. And when you get rocked, like not really just hit, but rocked, those are moments where probably the first couple times, I know I had a, holy fuck, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Can I run out of here? I remember having those, but it's like microseconds that it goes through your brain where you're like, what? This is nuts. And then all of a sudden you just figure it out.
You got to do it.
Yeah. And it's, am I going to sit here and just try and cover up? Or am I going to dish something right back, right? Yeah. So what I learned quickly was you've got to quickly let your opponent know, even if it's not your best shot, even if he blocks it or she blocks it, that it's not going to be that easy. It's not. And I'm going to send that message right back to you in some capacity. Even if they block it, it's okay, because you're coming back and going, boom, right? And then you start to look at it as a business. You start to look at it analytically. And here's what I mean. Guy lands a hard leg kick, right? You feel it. You're like, wow. And I'm like, all right, you're going to want that again. I know you are. Let me dangle that out here so you think you've got
marketing.
It. Right. And so it now it becomes a tactical exercise in counter punching and also understand. So you start looking at it as, I'm not looking at it as, oh my God, that hurts. I take that, because here's the thing. When you sit there and you go, oh my God, that hurt, fuck, that hurt. Okay, that's all you're focusing on. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah, and that was a while back.
Yes, it's gonna take longer now, because that's what but if you go, all right, he got that. I'm not dead. Yeah, I'm fine. Right? Check. Okay, he's going to want it again. So now I've shifted my energy into thinking, into problem solving. If you ever talk to, my son's 24, if you talk to him, he said, Billy, what's the difference between stress and challenge? He would look at you, he'd roll his eyes and go, perspective, because he's heard it his whole life, right? Yeah. But here's the thing. When you're thinking about that, getting punched in the face, you're stressing, right? Now, if I think, okay, he landed his jab, why did he do that? All right, I didn't parry, and I had my head forward. How do I want to counter that? Now I've turned that stress into challenge, because now I'm channeling positive energy on problem solving, right? And that's where fighting, and you know this well, that's where fighting changes your thinking and develops your character as a human being, because you're overcoming very black and white obstacles, problems, and turning them into challenges.
Love it. That's awesome. There's people, Stuart, in the world that are about to embark on a journey, whatever that happens to be. Maybe it's new business. Maybe they've listened to this episode, just like, holy shit, I'm getting in the ring. I'm going to take the fight. Whatever that happens to be. I call these people rebels in waiting. What advice do you have for these people to take that step, whatever that step happens to be? What do you recommend?
First off, rock solid belief in yourself. Ground yourself in, this is what I'm going to accomplish. There is that old expression, which is a cliche, right? Failure is not an option. It's really rock solid belief. I never doubted I wanted to be a fighter from day one. In fact, the guys training me, you don't want to do this. It's going to be obsessive. You just want to train, you want to get better, but you don't want to actually fight. I never doubted that. That was always in there. So define what that is. You can't define what the journey is going to be like. You can't define the results, but define what it is that you want and have that rock solid belief that you can. And then secondly, put that energy out into the world. There are 3 advantages I believe that I have and that every human being can own every single day, right? And I talk about this, I speak to this in the documentary, but it's true because it's a mantra I live by, which is you can't outwork me. You can't. You cannot, hour for hour, you can't outwork. I don't care who, you can't outwork me. You can't have more focus. I'm not saying more hours. I'm just saying you can't outwork me. You can't have a stronger desire to learn every day than I do. You can't bring more desire. You can be smarter than me. A lot of people are, right? A lot of people are. You can have more resources, you can have more education, but I'm going to have this desire to learn, and you can't bring more positive energy than me every single day. So if you bring those 3 things to your dream, I'm going to outwork anybody, I'm going to have a desire to learn every day, and every day I'm going to function in a state of gratitude, appreciation, and positive energy, then you're going to attract the people and the resources that you need to achieve that dream or that vision, to become that rebel. That's what I would share.
That's fucking awesome.
Thank you.
Stuart Warren Dansby, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I can't stress enough that people should check it out. Taking the Fight. Look for the documentary. There will be links down in the show notes. And, I invite you to learn more about your journey and what you're doing. Thanks so much for being on the show, Stuart.
Truly my privilege and my pleasure, Michael. It really is. I'm just blessed to share this opportunity with you.
Hey, it's me again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're an artist, entrepreneur, or business owner who believes your brand can be more than it is, head over to brandjitsu.com and join the list to get your copy of my book, Brand Jitsu, Move Your Brand from Meh to Memorable. I've been your host, Michael Dargie, and this has been the RebelRebel Podcast. It's a podcast for creative rebels and entrepreneurs all over the world. And hey, if you're a rebel or you know a rebel, why don't you head on over to the RebelRebelPodcast.com and fill out our guest request form. Share or subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And thanks so much for listening. Until next time.